And so again, now it's 2006, Mission Impossible 3, and it's directed by none other than J.J. Abrams. A little bad robot comes up at the beginning. So Bridget, you accepted this mission, so go ahead and take over.
All right. Well, step one for this mission is for Agent Miles to give us the summary. So take it away, Miles.
All right. I'm happy for this one because I think this one is the best of the series. And in this one, you have Ethan Hunt, right? Tom Cruise. He's semi-retired, and he's planning to get married to his fiancee, Julia. And he's leading Agents Luther, Declan Gromley, and Jen Lee, played by Maggie Q, to rescue captive agent Lindsay Ferris, who Ethan has been training. And then there's arms dealer Owen Davian, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, and he is awesome. Awesome in this movie. He seeks a mysterious weapon called the Rabbit's Foot, which we never find out what it is. Davian kidnaps Julia, forcing Ethan into a global chase from Berlin to Shanghai. He runs most of the way. After stealing the Rabbit's Foot, Hunt is betrayed by the IMF insider and friend, John Musgrave, who was working with Davian. And in a climactic showdown, Hunt kills Davian and himself by electrocution and frees Julia, and then she manages to resuscitate Ethan and shoots Musgraves, and the team's efforts save Julia, and Hunt resumes his personal life, and the two of them seem to go off together to the cinematic sunset together, happily ever after.
Oh.
Yeah.
And this, yeah.
So at this point, if we have any popcorn thoughts on this one, let's dive into reactions there. Miles, what do you think? Especially about Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, so great. From Dusty from Twisters to Davian in this one, he was a chilling villain. That like when he's got Ethan back in his crosshairs after Ethan tried to interrogate him, and he's flipped the tables, and Ethan is desperate and he's losing. Oh, you have your hero hanging on by a thread, and then you introduce in this series what I think was really, I already mentioned this. The best thing, I think, for Ethan's character is introducing his love for his wife, which immediately makes him relatable to all the families in America. And then it also removes all the, just the James Bond philandering, fornication, drinking, all that kind of stuff. It moves that. It's an action series without that, which makes it so much more tangible or, palatable for me and relatable. And so I really love this movie. Plus, the scene in the trailers when he's running, and the drone blows up the street beside him, and he slams into the car. It's like, you had action elements, but it wasn't John Wooey, J.J. Abrams. This one was just great.
I'll jump in here on 3. One of the reasons that I love it is you had an awesome, tight, tense, climactic movie, and you didn't need crazy CGI at the end. So I'm just and all you needed was her and him, and even her actually having getting the kill shot, taking out the guy at the end, right? But what I loved, the first movie was great in my opinion, but it was sort of a Mission Impossible if the mission went wrong. It was almost like it took the whole series in so many ways and turned it all on its head. Phelps is bad, but not just that. Like in Mission Impossible, the series, I don't think they ever technically got disavowed. They would accomplish their missions. And so the first one was sort of a rare bird. And so by 3 now, it's like, we're not going the action route. J.J. Abrams is steering us closer back to a little more teamwork, a little more cerebral. The scenarios are impossible, but it's not impossible like defying physics. So to me, it's like he's bringing us back to almost. I was so happy with the course correction for this series, and I would agree, Miles, even though it's not my favorite, best villain.
He's great.
Yeah. And I think we tend to remember Philip Seymour Hoffman very fondly because of his untimely death. But I mean, agreed. Even when this came out, before that happened, everyone was shocked and blown away.
It was like along came Polly, and then David.
I think it almost has a similar vibe to the way everyone was shocked by Heath Ledger as the Joker, right? Kind of a similar and roughly the same time frame of this this incredible comic actor really turning the tables and surprising everyone. The casting is great. We get Lawrence Fishburne in this one as well. And of course, as was mentioned, Simon Pegg is in this series, and this is where he's introduced. Gotta love Benji. But also, Aaron Paul is in this movie. I completely forgot about that. I was like, when I heard his voice, I was like, Jesse? Like, this is like 2 years before Breaking Bad. And he's in it, given Tom Cruise a big hug, and I'm like, oh man, this has got to be like, he's thinking this is the best it's ever going to get. Oh, it's going to get better.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and as far as casting goes, I want to give it a shout out to, because he listens to this podcast. Billy Crudup, I think, is just a fantastic actor. I wish he got a little bit more to do in this movie. I just think he is great as well. But I would agree, Miles and James, with what both of you said. I think I'm not sure between Davian and Solomon Lane. I think they're my two favorite villains in the series. But I think that Philip Seymour Hoffman takes it as far as the portrayal of a villain. Oh my goodness, the scene when he's saying to Ethan, Ethan is threatening to throw him out of a plane. Yeah. And Davian's response is, "Who's your woman? Because I'm going to find her and I am going to make her feel, that. Yeah. And there's nothing happening on his face. He's just the way he delivers that, he's so calm. And I think it's the calm that makes him terrifying. Yeah. That portrayal is top notch. He was such a phenomenal actor. Just sad that.
Even the decision to open the film, I
was going to say,
have it later in the film and then you rewind. I mean, even that was, it felt like almost a throwback to more like a TV series type of maneuver that you would do. Yeah. Movies don't, that's a very odd movie choice.
2 weeks earlier.
You don't see so often.
Yeah, that's
sort
true.
of roll it back from that tense scene and then take us back and wait till we get there again. That was cool.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, David.
That was it. That was my point. Okay. The way they started this movie. I mean, if there was any doubt of what this movie was going to be like, I mean, that opening scene just really just disavows you. If you like that.
And I always, every time I go back to rewatch the series, I always think we don't get Benji until part 4. I always picture him as once we have the new direction of the series settled, that's when Benji comes in. And then when I watch 3, I'm like, oh no, I'm wrong again. He actually shows up in part 3 and I'm wrong every single time. Yeah. So I love that he shows up here. And so the theological direction that I wanted to take this one in is focused on relationships. I feel like because this is the movie where we meet Julia for the first time, that we kind of should dive into Ethan's relationship with her just a little bit. So I think before I get into the Julia thing, I think it's worth mentioning that we see Ethan at the beginning of this movie also have a completely, fully platonic relationship with a younger woman whom he sees as a younger sister, and that's Agent Lindsay Ferris. Yeah. And what I think is so interesting about Ethan as a character is that it's almost like he is incapable of not empathizing with the people around him. So he sees this younger woman who's training to become an agent, and he instantly sisterizes her. And he says that about her. She's like a little sister, a younger sister to me. And it's his job. He takes it on as his responsibility to protect her. So this fast forwards to a future movie, so I won't say too much here. But if you've just recently watched the movies, I'm sure you remember the scene. I can't remember if it's Rogue Nation or Fallout, with the very young female police officer who sees Ethan and the IMF team, and the way that he speaks to her. And the last thing he says to her before the team has to leave that location, he looks her right in the eye and says, "I'm so sorry." Mm-hmm. He didn't do any. He tried to save her. He didn't do anything bad. But this is Ethan Hunt. So again, my point with that is just that he's a totally morally consistent character. And we've been talking a lot about the comparisons between him and James Bond. When I was typing this out in the doc, what the thought that hit me was, I actually feel like he is very similar to Captain America. He's like the Captain America of the espionage world. I've always loved Captain America too, so it makes sense when I saw it like that. I was like, okay, that might explain why I love Ethan Hunt so much. But he's just like the Boy Scout that you want out there saving the world.
Which is so funny because most of his tests are like lying to people, deceiving, and like shooting. But but they find a way to write him in such a way where you're right, he is like Captain America, even when he's kidnapping people to pretend to be him, to get plutonium and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah,
and even when he's going rogue,
went undercover as a Nazi.
Exactly.
And even when he's going rogue, he's doing so in a way. It's like, I mean, technically he's not following the book because he's going rogue, but he's fighting for the, to quote another Simon Pegg movie, the greater good, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's that same struggle, is that continually he's in these positions where other movies would make you have to make a sacrifice for the greater good, and he goes, no, I will do the impossible thing to I think the phrase I invented here, protect the world that Julia is in. You know, and it's like yes, like that, as a man, as a husband, it's like I wish I was going and pretending like I was going to the church office and was a secret agent. My wife is at home. I'm saving the world. But it's also for you. It's great.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you convince people you're not, is by saying things like that, Miles. I know the truth. I wish I was.
But I'm trying more. I'm going for the Solomon Lane beard, the imprisoned Solomon.
I like too with this series that there is very clear good and evil. And I like, David, you were just saying how Ethan he's not afraid to go off book, but what I appreciate about him is that he's always working to bring the book back to him. You know, like every time he goes off book, he's like alerting the proper authorities, like, hey, I'm doing this thing you have told me not to do, but here's your chance to get caught up to me and what I'm doing. So he's always bringing people back into the fold as well.
It's almost like, to interject briefly, it's almost like a Christ-like feature there, because I mean, if you think about it, was Christ's scolding of the Pharisees was because they had lost the heart of what the law was about. They had lost the proper relationship with God. And so was Jesus going rogue? Was Jesus going off book? He was going off their book, but their book was wrongly aligned. He was the book.
Right.
And so, I think that
the kingdom of God is not a rogue nation, but there you go.
Exactly. It's bringing them back. So anyway.
Yeah. So I'll jump right into Ethan and Julia at this point. So it's hard to talk about this relationship without also like kind of hinting at things that happen in future movies. But even I think in this movie, we get such a great picture of what their relationship looks like. And so the point that struck me watching it this time around is what does it truly mean to leave and cleave? For a man to leave his parents and join his wife in marriage, and the two become one flesh and create their new family unit. Because I think this movie presents a very complicated picture of what it can look like, even when you're trying to do the right thing in your marital relationship. So Genesis 2:18 tells us that it's not good for man to be alone. So God made for him a suitable helper. Julia is the definition of a suitable helper. Ethan does not win the day in this movie without her. She is the one who takes out one of the bad guys at the end. Yep. She is the one who literally has to bring Ethan back to life at the end of the movie. Like, he would be dead in part 3 if it weren't for his wife. Yeah. It's hard to imagine a more suitable helper than that. And then also Genesis 2:24 continues the same theme. A man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. But I think the question that we see Luther raising for Ethan to consider in this movie, though, is, are there truly lifestyles that are incompatible with marriage? And what expectations should we have as Christians as we think through this, that a guy like Ethan, does he not get to get married? Is it selfish for him to seek a marital relationship knowing that anyone he loves will always be in danger because of people like Davian? Is it on him to give up the career that he has in order, like, is that what leaving and cleaving should look like for him, that he completely retires from the IMF in order to be with his wife? But the problem there even is that, okay, let's say he does leave the IMF. He's still known to bad guys who will surely still come after him. At the very least, the government still knows that he's out there, and they'll find a way to pressure him to coming back into service with them. At one point in the series, we have Ilsa saying to Ethan, they don't care if you live or die. You know, like at some point, the government will come knocking on his door again, even if he tries to walk away. So I guess I was thinking through these marriage themes presented in this movie, and I was really interested to get all of your thoughts on that. What does marriage look like when your life is so inherently dangerous?
Well, I think this is what Paul's getting at when he's talking in Scripture. I think Luther pulled out his inner Paul. And he's like, you know, it's better for you not to marry. Yeah, right? Scripture goes there. Like there are certain situations, times, environments, and roles. Paul himself, right? I mean, he's like, so I mean, you might equate Ethan not with Jesus, but with Paul. And in this case, it's like, dude, you are going to get shipwrecked and beaten, and you're going to be running so much that you just don't have time for a spouse. You're either given to that wholly over to mission, which is something, I mean, Jesus didn't get married.
Yeah.
Christ incarnate, didn't get married.
Yeah.
That wasn't his mission. That's not what he was here for. So I think there's something very real about that. I think some dangerous missionaries should be thinking about that.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a Christian context for all of that. I think we see there's a Genesis norm, but then in a broken world, there's a gospel call that calls people to particular mission that might preclude marriage, men and women in certain circumstances. At the same time, and I'm struggling with his name, there's a very famous story about a missionary man who was killed, and his wife actually went back to that tribe.
Jim Elliot.
Thank you.
The end of the spear, is the movie and the book.
If a husband and wife are committed knowing about the danger, there's a place for that too. And I feel like this movie wanted to kind of give them the "it's okay" thing, and then pulls it back. Obviously,
the sequels
films.
But if it's Ethan, it's like it is almost an impossible task to be a world saver and a good husband and good husband and father. That would be hard. That's that's a genuine tension. There's a great scene in Mission Impossible 3 when he's putting on the mask, the Philip Seymour Hoffman mask, and they're having this conversation about marriage, and he's like, "We already got engaged, and congratulations!"
Yeah,
and it's a great scene.
Perfect. Yeah,
but that sets up the backdrop for the rest of the series, which I loved about that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I know we're past the spoiler point, so I guess I can say that by the time we get to Fallout, we can safely assume that Ethan and Julia have divorced. Is this a biblically allowable context for divorce if it's in the name of saving the life of your spouse? Does Scripture allow for divorce? Because they do get married in 3. So now that marital bond is created, is the threat to Julia's life a biblically justified reason to break that vow?
I'm inclined to say no, even after extolling the virtues of Ethan Hunt. It would be a good reason not to get married in the first place. Right.
They should have. That seems like a failing on his part, because part of me always, they don't give us great detail. It's kind of vaguely said that maybe they decided together. But I'm guessing that was probably a little more Ethan than her.
I was under the impression she was in witness protection. Not that doesn't mean they got divorced, but I was under the impression that she had to change her identity. But I'm maybe mistaken about that.
And then there's the speech that's explained. I think it's
if they weren't divorced, it makes things kind of awkward later.
Divorced to get remarried. Not quite, but it's still given the crazy context. I can celebrate most of it. From a Christian perspective, it's just you should have had this conversation before proposing.
Well, in the context of the third movie, they go off together. Like, there's nothing to complain about in the context of just this movie alone. It kind of stands on its own. I think to reboot and get Tom Cruise back for future sequels, I think that complicates the relationship in ways that that they made the best of it. I think, but.
Well, and who knows, at this point,
it complicates it.
Yeah.
Right. And at this point, it might have been conceived that this was the end. I know when I watched it in theaters, I thought, and that's it, because this is the third movie. And that's
Happily
how it
ever
goes.
after. Look at this. Good job.
There's never more than 3 unless it's Jaws or Land Before Time. Everything else ends at 3. But no, obviously that changed in the mid 2000s. But at 2006, that was roughly how I viewed the world. So
yeah.
What else you got, Bridget?
Just really quick, I just thought it was worth mentioning Ethan and Luther's relationship as well. So just really fast, I had Proverbs 18:24 there. A man of many companions may come to ruin, and who sticks closer than a brother. So, just I think that's just a really interesting relationship, like the bromance that those two have. But it's very cool that we see them come at that friendship from 2 different perspectives too. Ethan is the crazy, I'm going to just dive right into this. Whereas obviously Luther maybe was the voice of reason, trying to help him be out and tell him not to get married. And this is something you should think more about. So they have 2 different mentalities, but man, those 2 guys are there for each other. So I was just reminded of that verse watching that relationship this time through.
Nice. Well, and that's so you got Luther, and now we have Benji And so that kind of moves us into 2011. And so a few years later here, and we get into Mission Impossible. We stop with the numbers, right? And now we go to subtitles, as all good franchises do. And we have the Ghost Protocol. And basically we get what might be, if push comes to shove, my favorite of the franchise. But I'm going to give the mission to Miles anyway, despite that. We hope you enjoyed this snack-sized taste of Popcorn Theology. Check out the full episode using the link in the description. Subscribe on YouTube for more content. Follow and interact on social media to share with others. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.